welcome to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mideles, and I am your host here in Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of deep South Texas. Got a great program lined up for you today. In a little bit, our Julian Resendez out of El Paso is going to be leading a conversation with the Executive Director of the Hope Border Institute, Mr. Dylan Corbett. Looking forward to that one coming up. But first, as always, we're going to take a look at what's trending across the border, starting with a popular mayor in Mexico's Michoacan state was shot and killed during Day of the Dead festivities. Now, this attack happened Saturday night in Uruapan's historic center. Mayor Carlos Alberto Manzo Rodriguez was rushed to a hospital but later died. A city council member and a bodyguard were also injured. The attacker was killed at the scene. The attack on the mayor was carried out by an unidentified man who shot him 7 times, according to the federal security secretary. The weapon was linked to 2 armed clashes between rival criminal groups operating in the region, he added. On Sunday, hundreds of Uruapan residents dressed in black and held up photographs of Manzo Rodriguez, and they took to the town streets to accompany the funeral procession and bid farewell to the slain mayor. They chanted, "Justice, justice, out with Morena," a reference to the ruling party of Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum. Manzo Rodriguez had previously sought help to confront the cartels. Michoacan is known for violence among cartels and criminal groups. And before we get into that interview, I did want to bring in El Paso correspondent Julian Resendez now to speak a little bit about this. Julian, you've been following this. What can you tell us?
Rudy, what I can tell you is that there is outrage, not just in the state of Michoacan or in the city of Uruapan, but all throughout Mexico, because people have pretty much had it with the drug cartels and the violence, the impunity that they apparently enjoy. I mean, this happened during an open festival with hundreds of people gathered. Granted, there was a target identified, which was the mayor, but the bullets, there could have been stray bullets that hit any number of people in the crowd. And as a matter of fact, like you stated, 3 people, a bodyguard, a city councilman, and a secretary from the city government were also injured. So there's been protests. There's a lot of outrage on social media, on printed legacy media as well. And answers are being asked from the Mexican federal government. This morning, I watched a news conference involving the president of Mexico, the public safety secretary, and the Mexican defense minister, who were forced to explain how this happened out in the open during a popular celebration in a country that they said is otherwise peaceful. One of the explanations was that this mayor, who just about a month ago, went on various social media and broadcast interviews and said he was so fed up with the narco violence that he was considering asking people to arm themselves and be ready to defend themselves against the drug traffickers. That seems to have precipitated the animosity between organized criminal groups against this very popular mayor. And federal authorities are pretty much saying, well, we're looking into it. We're leaving it to local authorities to solve this crime. There was some excuse making to the fact that, yeah, there was National Guard present at the event, but the mayor himself had requested that his own police force be the one that stayed close to him, just because he trusted them, he knew them, and he thought they would be able to protect them. And in the words of the Mexican defense minister, they did just that until Saturday night.
¿Cuál era el papel de la Guardia Nacional? Era proporcionar.
What was the role of the National Guard? It was to provide security in the periphery. In December, we did a risk analysis, and the mayor determined municipal police officers he knew and trusted would provide the immediate personal security. And they did a good job until this happened, mostly because how vulnerable this event was.
Now, Rudy, I can also tell you that further protests are planned. There was a street protest in the state capital of Morelia on Sunday, in which people took to the street. But there were other groups that went straight to one of the government buildings and started breaking doors, windows, vandalizing it, and then the state police had to intervene, and arrest them. So we'll see what happens in coming days. But again, this is a sign that people are starting to get fed up in Mexico with the drug cartels, and that things can happen almost overnight that are out of their control.
All right. Well, thank you so much for reporting on this, Julian. We'll come back to you in just a few moments. But right now, back to the headlines. And going back to the news, President Donald Trump was on 60 Minutes this weekend. It had been 5 years since the president appeared on the news show, since its parent company, CBS News, settled a lawsuit with the president. He agreed to sit down with the network for a wide-ranging conversation, among them the topic of immigration. The president said his administration is doing a good job with the deportation of undocumented migrants.
Have some of these raids gone too far?
No, I think they haven't gone far enough because we've been held back by the judges, by the liberal judges that were put in by Biden and by Obama.
You're okay with those tactics?
Yeah, because you have to get the people out. You know, you have to look at the people. Many of them are murderers. Many of them are people that were thrown out of their countries because they were, criminals.
Well, you promised in your campaign that you were going to deport the worst of the worst. Violent criminals,
we're doing that.
Rapists.
Well, that's what we're doing.
But a lot of the people that your administration has arrested and deported aren't violent criminals. Landscapers, nannies, construction workers,
landscapers
farm
who are criminals.
workers.
Yeah. No, look.
The family of U.S. service
I need
members.
landscapers and I need farmers more than anybody, okay?
Is it your intent to deport people who do not have a criminal record?
We have to start off with a policy, and the policy has to be you came into the country illegally, you're going to go out.
The president also claimed that 25 million migrants were allowed into the country under the Biden administration. In several cities across the country this weekend, people gathered at their local Home Depots as part of a national Ice Out of Home Depot rally. The protest was held in Baltimore County, Maryland, where activists are calling on the store and other corporations to stop enabling policies that endanger workers who are migrants. Home Depot said in a statement, "We aren't notified that immigration enforcement activities are going to happen, and we aren't involved in the operations," end quote. Protesters said last week 9 ICE trucks visited the Home Depot and took day laborers away. They categorized those incidents as kidnappings. Time now to bring in our El Paso correspondent Julian Resendiz once again, along with our guest for today's program, the executive director of the Hope Border Institute, Mr. Dylan Corbett.
Well, really, we just heard the president of the United States give his side of what's going on as far as immigration, illegal immigration in the United States, what his policies are, what his priorities are. So I think we now have someone who can give us a very different perspective. And he is a local man here in El Paso. He is Dylan Corbett, executive director of the Hope Border Institute, which is based right here in El Paso. And Mr. Corbett, for the past 6 years that I've been here, I've been following closely the activities of Hope Border Institute. I am familiar with what you guys do for the community and how you guys are also in touch with partner organizations across the border in Juarez, Mexico. Mr. Corbett, can you tell us a little bit about the organization, yourself, and what some of its priorities are at this moment in terms of immigration policy?
Thanks, Julian. Yeah, of course. The Hope Border Institute, we're actually celebrating 10 years this year. We were founded back in May 2015. We're a Catholic social action organization, and so we look at issues of social justice, and we research the impacts of policy on our border community from the perspective of social justice. We look at policy and we advocate for better policies for our border community. And we also work in the humanitarian space. For many years, we've offered a humanitarian assistance to migrants who are coming to the U.S.-Mexico border. And we work binationally. We also work in Ciudad Juarez. As you mentioned, we have a number of partners in Ciudad Juarez, and a lot of the activity that we've done over the past several years to support the needs of migrants has been in Ciudad Juarez, both migrants who are coming north and people who are deported or moved south to Ciudad Juarez. So we've worked on this issue of immigration for a long time now. It's one of the big issues that's facing our border community, of course. And we're also, of course, paying attention to the impacts of the new policies that are coming from the Trump administration. We're very concerned with the policies that we're seeing We see them in a couple different ways here at the border. As a border community, we see the impact of the closure of the border to asylum seekers and other vulnerable migrants. But we're not just on the border, we're also an interior community here in El Paso. We're part of the United States. So we don't just see the closure of the border to asylum seekers, but we also see the reality of interior enforcement. So also paying attention to that issue as well.
Speaking of asylum seekers, I know that El Paso, up until a year ago, was one of the busiest entry points for people fleeing not just poverty, like the president says, but also some very dire public safety situations in their home countries, as well as in some cases outright persecution because of their political views or because of who they are. So what can you tell us? What are the venues right now available for asylum seekers? Are you still seeing some of them still approaching the border? And if not, what are you hearing from those who were already on this side waiting a process, and that process apparently is either halted or very complicated? What can you tell us about them?
Yeah, I think it's an issue that concerns us in El Paso because it really is so much of who we are. This is a community that's been shaped by the reality of immigration, not just in recent years, but it's part of our identity right from the beginning, hundreds of years ago. This has always been a community which has received migrants and supported migrants. We know migration from so many different perspectives. And as you note, over the past several years, we have seen a number of people coming from countries, for example, in Central America, coming to the United States to seek protection and because they're fleeing very difficult situations in their home countries. Unfortunately, at the top of the year when the Trump administration came into office, they changed all that and quite dramatically. I remember on January 20th, as the president was giving a speech during his inauguration as he was taking office, CBP moved very, very quickly to close the border virtually completely to asylum seekers, people who had appointments through, for example, the CBP-1 process to begin the process of asylum or obtain parole. All that was suspended. And I think, if we compare, for example, what's happened just this year to the 4 years of the first Trump administration, they really achieved in a question of minutes, what they weren't able to achieve in 4 years the first time around, which is really the virtual closure of the border to all vulnerable migrants. They ended the refugee program, they've suspended asylum, and so there's almost nobody who's able to access protection who's fleeing our obligations under federal law to meet the needs of asylum seekers. That's really ended. And it's been pretty dramatic. It's been dramatic and across the board, not just here in El Paso, but really from San Diego to South Texas. And so, again, it's hard to stress how dramatic and how complete this has been, but it's really been a virtual closure of the border to vulnerable migrants.
We're speaking with the Executive Director of the Hope Border Institute, Mr. Dylan Corbett. We're going to continue the conversation after a quick break, so please stay with us. Border Report Live is back in 1 minute. Welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles. Joining me today, our El Paso correspondent, Julian Resendiz, and our guest for today's program, the Executive Director of the Hope Border Institute, Mr. Dylan Corbett.
Mr. Corbett, we just spent the past few minutes talking about what you're seeing both here in El Paso, as well as across the border in Juarez, Mexico. Now, I understand that you were part of a group of El Paso residents, El Paso natives who had the chance to go to the Vatican and meet with Pope Leo. And I understand that you guys talk about migration. Can you please tell us in some detail what the trip was all about, what you guys were able to discuss with the Pope, and what his reaction to your conversation was?
Yeah, this meeting was just a couple weeks ago. I remember being there in Rome and visiting the Vatican and visiting the Holy Father, Pope Leo, the new Pope this year in the Catholic Church. Why did we meet with him? Well, over the past several months, because of the new policies from the Trump administration, really going after families, really targeting people for immigration enforcement, an uptick in detention, an uptick in deportation, an uptick in policies which are dividing families. We had begun to receive letters from our partners all over the country, churches and schools and faith communities, from California to here in Texas, to states like Kansas and Iowa and Florida and Massachusetts, from people who are directly affected by the current policies, people who either they may be undocumented themselves, or they may be part of families where there are people who don't have documents. And so we began to receive these letters that really detailed the anxieties that people felt, the pain that they felt because of what's happening, but also their hopes and their resilience, what they want, why migrants have come to our country in the first place, why migrant families are here, everything that they contribute, everything that they want to continue to give to this country and to our communities across the country. And so we took these letters to the new Pope, Pope Leo XIV. Of course, he's from the United States. He's from Chicago. He's an American. And so we wanted to be able to put this pain and these anxieties and this hope and these stories of resilience in his hands. And so we traveled to Rome. We also created a video. There were some folks within the immigrant community who put together a video which drew together different aspects of those letters, citations and quotes, put them together so that we could show the video to the Pope. We didn't know, how long we were going to be able to meet with the Pope, or if he was going to be able to see the video or read the letters. But a number of us from the community here in El Paso, including leaders from the Catholic Church and leaders from our immigrant communities here that work here in our local neighborhoods, we went together to the Pope, and he met with us. And we were able to put the letters in his hands. We were able to show him the video. He watched the video. And it was a very powerful experience. We felt such sense of responsibility in carrying these messages, these messages that were so, contained the hopes and the dreams and the fears of so many in our country right now, just here in El Paso, but across the United States. Who are experiencing this moment of fear when we're seeing ICE really terrorize communities across the country. We gave him the messages. He listened to us. He watched the video. He teared up as he watched the video. And he was very clear, how he felt about it. He said, this is a real injustice, what we're witnessing. He talked about how the church in particular needed to be united and clear in its opposition and opposing what's happening, and working for a better future for so many immigrant families across the country. So it was an amazing encounter. It was very reaffirming. He affirmed the work that we're doing here in El Paso and that immigrant communities are doing across the country to protect their families in this moment of, again, real fear because of what we're seeing from the Trump administration. And we left with his blessing and with the real honor of having been able to tell the story of El Paso and the story of so many immigrant families from across our country to the new leader of the Catholic Church throughout the world.
All right. Good to hear that somebody in such a top position got to hear from El Paso and its concerns. One question I do have is, what do you think the impact is going to be of the Pope pushing for a different approach to immigration? Do you think the administration, do you think some of the red leadership in the red states is going to do something about it? What do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things that come to mind. He's from Chicago, this Pope, and he's an American. But I think he also sees this. It was clear from our meeting with him that he sees this from a broader perspective. We think immigration is just an American challenge and that it's an American political issue. It was clear that the Pope appreciates that it's a real social issue in our country and a matter of a public policy of real urgency. But he also sees this from a broader perspective. Migration is a challenge throughout the world. And when we think about, leaders around the world right now who are speaking out on behalf of the rights and the dignity of people who migrate, there's not a lot of people right now who are carrying that flag. There's not a lot of people who are saying we ought to defend migrants, to welcome them, to promote them, to integrate them into our societies. Pope Leo is one of the few people on the global stage that's really making that argument, because so many political leaders across the globe, not just here in the US, but also in Europe and other parts of the world. In Japan, for example, there's been a resurgence of xenophobia and a reaction against people who are migrating. But it's a world challenge. It's a global challenge, and we need innovation and creativity. But I see that Pope Leo, is taking on that mantle and as a global leader, again, one of those few people who are speaking out on the behalf of the human dignity of people who migrate. I think in our country, he's encouraging people of faith. He's encouraging ordinary Catholics to defend what really makes our country special and unique, which is the contributions and the resilience and the dedication of people who migrate. He was very clear that we need to be united in that. So I expect him to encourage Catholics, leadership in the Catholic Church, to continue to speak out on behalf of that human dignity, on behalf of the contributions that migrants made to our country, to continue to urge us to celebrate those contributions, but also to stand united, as he said, against the injustices which we're seeing. And I think that we're going to see that those injustices are going to continue to last. The Trump administration and the Republican Congress, they just passed a bill, over the summer, the big, beautiful bill, which gives an incredible amount of resources to ICE and to the deportation machine. And so this is going to be something that we continue to see, these attacks on immigrant communities throughout the country. And I think that the Pope is offering us leadership and saying we've got to have a different future. We've got to do something differently, because this is a real injury. This is a real insult to basic human decency and dignity. And I think he's going to continue to speak out.
All right. It's good to know that, like you point out, this is a message that reverberates throughout the world. So it has the potential not only to change or shape immigration policy here in the U.S., but throughout the Americas, throughout the world.
That's right. Yeah, I think it's a message that we need to hear, because this is a moment, again, when migrants don't have a lot of people in power in their corner. A lot of politicians right now, they're tempted to buy into that political game of painting immigrants as enemies and outsiders and criminals. And we know that that's not true. We know that in El Paso, a quarter of our population is foreign-born. We're 82% Mexican American. We're a beautiful, resilient community, like many of our border communities. Not in spite of migration, but largely because of migration. Migrants have brought their aspirations and their hopes and their desires to participate in economic vitality to our border communities, and not just our border communities, but to the United States. It's part of what makes our country so dynamic. And we're really, by criminalizing immigration and by speaking about people as if they were criminals, we're doing ourselves a disservice as a country. It's not good. It's not good economically. It's not good morally. It may be a short-term political strategy that pays off for some on the right, but it's really we're going to be shooting ourselves in the foot as a country.
We've been speaking with the executive director of the Hope Border Institute, Mr. Dylan Corbett. Unfortunately, we're out of time. I feel like this is one of those conversations that could have gone on for a few more hours had we had that kind of time slot. But we appreciate you being here today.
Great to be with you all. Thank you.
All right. Stay with us. Border Report Live is back in 1 minute. Welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mideles here in Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of Deep South Texas. We were speaking with the executive director of the Hope Border Institute, Mr. Dylan Corbett, about the letters that he took from migrants to the new Pope, Pope Leo, in Rome, and how they showed him a video of these migrants telling their story. And if you missed this conversation, remember that you can always stay up to date on the latest of what's happening across the border, whether you're on your commute home, maybe you're at the gym, or you're out walking the dog, because Border Report Live now brings you real-time updates, expert insights, and voices from both sides of the border in podcast form. You can find us now on Apple Podcasts, the iHeartRadio app, Spotify, or YouTube in both audio and video form in case you ever miss an episode. Real quick, got one more story to tell you about. Throughout Latin American countries this weekend, families gathered at cemeteries around the tomb of their deceased loved ones. At this cemetery in Mexico City, thousands gathered gathered to celebrate Dia de los Muertos, or the Day of the Dead. They placed flowers, food, and other offerings their deceased loved ones enjoyed. They come to keep those who have passed company for the night. The holiday has expanded in recent years, and it may be because of the commercialization of the day by Hollywood and others. But following tradition, November 1st is the day mainly dedicated to children who have passed away, and November 2nd is for adults. Real quick, before we go, we wanted to tell you to check out our partners at Political Power Ranker. It's a show that tracks the movers, shakers, and rule makers in American politics based on data every single week. You can find out more about Political Power Ranker at abc27.com, or you can check your local Nexstar station's website. That's going to do it for us today. For Julian in El Paso, my name's Rudy here in Harlingen. We'll see y'all tomorrow.